Wake Up and Open Your Eyes was a really, really bad book. It was ineffective at being a horror, and it was ineffective at criticizing news in America. And I think people are scared to criticize it because they don't want to disagree with the politics. And I think that's stupid, so I'm gonna criticize it. In case you clicked on this video and you haven't read Wake Up and Open Your Eyes or heard of it, it is a social horror about conservative media literally possessing its consumers. The book centers Noah, who is a middle aged liberal man, and his interactions with his parents, brother, and sister in law after they get possessed. It's broken up into three parts. The first part is Noah getting a call from his mom warning him of the great awakening that's about to happen. And his mom's kind of a conspiracy theorist, so he doesn't think anything of it until she fully stops answering his calls, which is super unlike her. She usually calls him multiple times a day and always picks up the phone. So he's worried about her, worried about his dad. So he decides to drive from New York City down to Virginia, where they live, to check on them. When he gets there, the house is like decrepit. He goes in, there's TVs blasting in every single room playing Fox News, which is the main conservative media. It's a news channel. And in case it's a little too subtle for you, it is a stand-in parody for Fox News. Anyways, it's blasting in every single room. The house is disgusting. The fridge is full of like rotting food. There are no lights on. Furniture is tipped over. So he thinks someone broke in and like killed his parents. So he's terrified walking around. And then he finds his parents and they attack him because they've been possessed. He narrowly escapes his parents' attack. He goes outside and he sees a whole bunch of people out on the streets attacking each other as well. So that's kind of where we learn that this is a widespread thing. It's not just his parents. Part two, we see a different perspective. It's Noah's brother's family, and we explore how different people get sucked in the conservative pipeline. His brother is a devout CNN watcher, and one day he switches to Fox News to kind of make fun of it about how much it sensationalizes the news. But then he finds all other news boring after that, so he only watches Fox News and starts to believe the things that he made fun of in the past. His wife decides to go on a wellness journey and starts following these wellness yoga influencers, and the more she follows them, the more they post these like conspiracy theories and conservative beliefs, and she gets sucked in that way. The older brother is kind of like a outcast. He has a whole bunch of acne that he's really insecure about, doesn't really have any friends, and he falls down a internet chat room forum pipeline where a whole bunch of people tell him that he's super important and builds his community and then manipulates him. And then lastly, there's the youngest brother, who is very young, like a toddler almost. I can't exactly remember, but he is safe from the pipeline. Part three, Noah decides to go up to his brother because he doesn't know that he's also possessed, and makes the trek from Virginia at his parents' house. I want to say it's like a 2-hour drive to Northern Virginia, where they live. He gets there, sees that their house is also a disaster, and the only sane person there is his youngest nephew. So he decides to take his nephew, and they're going to make their way up to New York City to be back with his wife and child, who he knows he'll be safe with. Now, from that synopsis, it sounds like it could be a good book, and that is why I picked it up. It sounded like it was going to be a good book. It sounded like it was going to be great commentary, and like, I think social horror is a fun way to explore the horrors that we're experiencing in real life, but it didn't do that very well. And to get into how it didn't do that very well, I do need to get into spoilers. So if you still want to read the book, now is a good time to click off, and you can come back after you read the book and see how terrible it was. Now, one of my first criticisms, which is not my main one, but the most glaring one, is the lack of subtlety. We see that with Fox News, but one of the most distracting and kind of pulls you out of the story is when people are about to get possessed. In front of them, they see gaslights, which I think they describe the visual as like colors like an oil slick, like in front of their faces. And it's so stupid. It's like the author wanted to like really get home that these people are being gaslit, but couldn't come up with a good metaphor, so decided to just make up something and called it gaslights, just in case his audience is really stupid. And that's something that always bothers me in a book. Like, give us some credit. Another smaller thing that really bothered me was the lack of horror in this book. It's a possession book. I thought we were going to have like jump scares almost, or some like psychological something happening, but it was purely shock value horror. And if it was like body horror, that would make sense for a possession story. And there was a little bit of that. The mom, the sister in law, puts her hand in a blender that is on and then drinks her hand goop. Disgusting. That was super effective for me. That grossed me out. But the majority of the horror was shock value sexual horror. In part one, his mom like strips down and touches herself in front of him and then pins him down and like grunts against him. And that's gross. That's scary because it's your mom like violating you. That's gross. And if it stopped there, that I would have been fine with that, because that is like horror directly happening to our main character, and it's like the personal aspect of his mom. That's disgusting. But that is not the only like shock value sexual thing that happens. Immediately when he goes outside his parents' house, there's like old people orgies happening in the front lawns of these people's houses. And then there's just constant orgies all along the walk from Virginia to Northern Virginia to New York. And after one, it doesn't shock you anymore. It's not surprising. It's annoying. And that was the majority of the horror. Stupid. That was stupid. And it made me mad. My main criticism for this book is the lack of commentary it managed to make while being a social horror. In this book, the main message is conservative bad, liberal good. Haha, you're so stupid for being conservative, which you're preaching to the choir. This isn't like a gotcha book. You're not going to trick a conservative into reading this and then making fun of them. You are preaching to the choir and you are providing no commentary. There was no dissection of how news is just made for entertainment now. It's not made to share information, and how all mainstream news channels are guilty of this. It's not just a conservative problem. There was no commentary on social media addiction and how that will drive people down the conservative pipeline. And there is a little bit with the mom and the like yoga influencers, but like it barely scratched the surface, and it didn't talk about how or why that happens. There was the chat room and kind of alluded at building community and that sucking people in, but there could have been so much more to that. It could have had aspects of how they suck you in through little things and get more and more extreme, and how when you first get sucked in and you see the really extreme stuff, you kind of put it off. But you didn't see that. You just saw him being beautifully manipulated with him questioning nothing, which is not how it happens. People usually question some things and are able to do some cognitive dissonance. Just everything that it touched on, it barely touched on it. It was so surface level, to the point that it wasn't saying anything at all. And I think it would have been a lot more effective if it wasn't just bashing on conservatives. I really expected there to be an over dramatized parody of CNN, but instead there was just CNN, and it was painted as like a perfect news station sharing the facts. And that's not true. It is also sensationalizing news, because that is how mainstream news companies make money. It's a systematic problem. And it didn't touch on that at all. I wanted to see like shitty infographics on Instagram being shared, like how to have compassion for the possessed, that like are not made in good intentions. They're made because people are professional clout chasers on Instagram and will make and post whatever gets them the most clicks. But there was none of that. At the very least, I expected the possession of his parents to be like a metaphor for when people you love get sucked into this conservative media, they become unrecognizable, hate filled monsters that cannot be reasoned with. But that was so obvious. That's what I thought the book was going to be about. And that parallel was not made at all. Like it was right there in front of you and it wasn't made, which kind of makes me think that the reason the author hit you over the head with every single thing he was saying is because he is not good at picking up and making metaphors. But that might be me. I also thought and expected when they were going through DC to find a prominent liberal Democrat politician who was possessed because he didn't actually believe in the things he was doing. He just knew that he could become a politician by saying those things to the people voting for him. I thought that would have been super interesting, and I kept waiting for it to happen, but it didn't. Or to see a prominent liberal news personality become possessed for like the same reason. I don't know. It was just really disappointing because I expected a deeper criticism of our news system as a whole. And I expected more discussion about these conservative pipelines and the issues that cause them to happen and how manipulative these things can be and how the other side can do the same thing. But instead, it was very one sided. It was very celebratory of liberals and very bashing "you're so stupid" to conservatives. And it made it feel like a cheap cash grab. The entire book was just kind of the same vibe as liberals on social media laughing at disaster victims in red states who lose their houses to like flooding or hurricanes because like you voted for this when like have some empathy. And yeah, it was just disappointing. And unfortunately, I don't have any recommendations for you that is this but better, but I do have some that might like scratch that itch of what this book was trying to do. I have 3 books to recommend, and only one of them is horror, and I'm sorry, but I'll start with that one, and it's Tell Me I'm Worthless. This is a queer horror set in the UK, so it is different, but it touches on transphobia. In it, there are 2 friends who enter a haunted house and they share this trauma in there that they both remember incredibly differently, and it causes a like riff and friendship breakup. And because of that trauma, one of the friends becomes like a prominent TERF in the area while the other friend is a trans woman. And this book uses a haunted house to kind of explore internalized biases and how the news we consume shapes us. So it has like a little bit of that aspect. This is definitely more gritty and full of triggers. So definitely check the trigger warnings. This is not a parody in any means. This is not silly, goofy, funny like Wake Up and Open Your Eyes was trying to be a little bit. So, not the best comparison, but the next book on this list is Worry. This is a like contemporary lit fic, very different vibes, but the reason I'm adding this book to this list for recommendations is because one of the things throughout this book is our main character's addiction to Mormon mommy bloggers. And she like hate follows them on Instagram on a secret account that she has just for this. And we kind of see the progression of these women going from I love sourdough and serving my husband to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And throughout the book, our main character is Jewish, so she'll go through and like comment on these people's things, telling them that they're anti-Semitic and crazy and like getting blocked. And I thought that that was fun. I thought that that was a better exploration of the like Instagram addiction and the conservative pipeline that people fall down on there. Also in that book, the mother is like newly conservative and is going down like a QAnon-esque rabbit hole and will call the sisters and be like, "You'll never believe what I just saw online," and it'll be some like crazy conspiracy theory like Hillary Clinton drinks baby's blood to stay young or something. And the sisters will be like, "That's clearly not true, mom." And the mom will be like, "I'm just trying to protect you. Why do you hate me? All I've ever done were good things for you, and you treat me like a monster." which I also thought that that was fun. I love books with mommy issues. The last book I have to recommend to you is a nonfiction, but bear with me. It is called The Quiet Damage: QAnon's Destruction of the American Family. And it sounds depressing, but it's actually really hopeful. It's written by an investigative journalist, so it's super easy to read. It's not overly analytical or academic. She goes through and she interviews a handful of people who have been affected by QAnon, whether it's themselves falling down that rabbit hole or family members. She follows a few different people. One of them was a man and his mother's descent into QAnon after being like a liberal woman her whole life, and how for her it was building community after she was an empty nester. She had no kids living with her, and her husband had died years before. So she was fully alone, secluded in a small farm town. And she found these theories online, and it created a community for her. That's how it sucked her in. Another person she interviewed was this younger woman who had been like a very liberal woman her whole life, going to protests and petitions and all of the things. And she fell down the rabbit hole through influencers. And it started out small with our political system is created to divide us, and eventually turned into the vaccines are here to control us. And her husband kind of pulled her out of that through like talking with her about her beliefs and kind of explaining her reasoning to him and him explaining his reasoning to her and kind of seeing the flaws in her logic. And it also touched on how her joining QAnon alienated her from her community in real life. So when she was kind of leaving that behind, she had no community, and her old friends wanted nothing to do with her because she turned into everything that they were fighting against. She interviews an elderly man whose wife kind of got into QAnon conspiracies because she was misdiagnosed with a cancer by a really scummy doctor who knew she didn't have cancer and was trying to scam her insurance company. And that left her incredibly critical of the medical system, rightfully so. But she went to the extreme of it and turned to holistic only medicine, which led her down to these conspiracy theories. A man explains how he got sucked into it because he saw a video that was about how our political system is corrupt. And he saw it and he was like, yes, all of this is true. And how he saw another video that had some crazier things in it, but everything in the other video he already agreed with. So these new things that were a little bit crazy must be true too. And with the next video, things got a little bit crazier, but everything before this he agrees with, so this must be true too. All the way until he's believing crazy things about how one day Trump is going to go through and arrest half of the politicians because he knows about the underground system where they are all pedophiles. But he was sprinkled these little bits of truth that led him to believe all of it was true and that QAnon was some great organization spreading the truth and was demonized by the media because it was hurting them. This book is so good because it is so compassionate of these people who have these like terribly harmful beliefs, because she knows where they're coming from. She knows that they lack community, that they've been burned by the system, that they are scared, and when people give them solutions, no matter how crazy they sound, they're willing to believe them because that's better than believing that everything is bad. She also, throughout this book, talks about how you can talk to loved ones who got sucked into this crazy alt-right conspiracy, and how you can help them see the flaws in their logic and pull them back out of it. She also explains the importance of community, and if you can, if they're not too far gone, to continue being in their lives, because alienating them more from the people that they love is only going to send them deeper into QAnon. It was so good. It was obviously super critical. It was a nonfiction book, but I expected it to be so depressing. I picked it up because I'm trying to read one nonfiction a month, and it was available at my library, and I picked it up and I did not want to read it. I did not want to be sent into a spiral about how people are bad and there's nothing you can do about it. but that's not what this book was. It was so good. I am recommending it to everyone. Anyways, I hated Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. And if you disagree, if you think it was critical and a lot of great commentary, I would love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, that's all. Thank you guys for watching.